Here we go.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so this activity is a little bit different, I think, than the ones we've had in the past. First, I kind of want everyone to take a turn, and so if anyone wants to volunteer to go first, we can do that. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at the questions or not yet, so if none of you have, then I'll go first while you think about it. But it says, describe your ethnic heritage. It says, do you anything, but I think it's supposed to say, do you do anything specific, as in food, holidays, language, customs, etc., to observe your ethnic heritage? Does anybody want to go first, or I can?
I can. I looked at it. I thought, yeah. Well, in fact, this was really interesting because there is one particular ethnicity that I kind of more or less identify with, but I wanted to check the other side and say, well, maybe I'm accidentally doing something to align myself with them too. I don't know, but no. I'm just going to read what I wrote and just simplify it and cut to the chase.
Okay.
I identify and am German, Scottish, and English. My paternal family is German. My maternal side is Scottish English. I identify more strongly with the German. All of my life, we celebrated Christmas with the big dinner and exchanging gifts on Christmas Eve. When our children were younger, my parents moved away, and my husband and I asked the boys when they wanted to celebrate Christmas and open their gifts. They looked at each other and said, Christmas Eve. I asked why. They admitted Christmas Eve came before Christmas Day. Spoken as boys. But yeah, all my life I've identified, German. For a long time I went through the identity thing with being embarrassed I was German because of how that equated with Adolf Hitler, who was Austrian and Jewish, but that's a whole other story. But then as I got into family history after I joined the church and learned about my posterity and learned what hard workers they were and how they didn't give up and how tenacious they were, I had a 15-year-old ancestor stow away on a ship just to get to the United States. And only because the ship was halfway across the voyage, they kept him and didn't go back. And he had to work off his voyage on the ship. So there's some things to be proud in that German ethnicity. So I've learned to embrace that.
Awesome, thank you.
The end.
Are you guys okay with, instead of me taking notes on this little portion, would you guys mind emailing me like kind of your little thoughts about this? But I feel like when I'm doing the paper, I don't want to miss anything that you guys said. Would you be okay with that?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So, I mean, and then I'll fill out the other ones, but just so you said your little piece in your words instead of what I can jot down really quickly. I feel like as far as our paper goes, that would be a little better. Anyway. Marty or Janice, do you guys want to go next?
I can go. So,
okay, great.
My mom has always told me that we were Heinz 57, and that was just the way it was. We have a little bit of everything in us. And so I'm a mutt. We have not a lot of things that we do. We celebrate Christmas, Easter, and just the regular national holidays that we have. I did look at on my father's side. I'm supposedly have Scottish, but since I never grew up with him, I don't have any traditions or heritage from that side. Doing genealogy, my Uncle Bill has told me that my children qualify to be daughters of the Revolution because they were part of the Revolutionary War, and that my grandmother's great came from Florida to Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears. And that's all I know.
Oh, the Trail of Tears, we heard about that. That's very unfortunate. Wow. Yeah.
I can go real quick.
Okay.
So I kind of laugh because Growing up and even now, I don't really cling to a certain ethnic heritage, I guess. I kind of see my family as white as they come. We're kind of like American sliced cheese kind of family. Like we don't, I don't know. There's no real like holidays or foods or customs that we really cling to other than just like, you know, the basic holidays. And we kind of have our traditions that we had as a family, but not necessarily because of any culture or anything. So it sounds pretty boring. I think doing genealogy, a lot of our family ancestors come from Europe. They're all white. So that's kind of what I know from my family.
I'm kind of the same way as you. I'm like I always grew up just thinking I was white. My dad just did the spit test thing, and he's exactly what he thought he was. He's Dutch and Swedish. And then I know that my grandma's French of some sort. Like I don't know how much of it or anything, but
what's she telling? I'm sorry, you faded out. What was she? She's what?
French. Her maiden name was Le Sueur, so that did give away with the last name. But I'm kind of with Genesee here. I don't really have anything that from my ethnic heritage that has changed anything. I feel like I have just adapted to basic American things, foods, language. We don't have any different things that we do to celebrate our heritage. Although my husband, his family, and it's like a very small thing. It's not that big of a deal. They recently found out that not recently, they've always known that they were Irish, but they recently found out that they have actually like English or Irish royalty. And so St. Patrick's Day is always just a fun day. We celebrate St. Patrick's Day maybe a little bit more than other people. I mean, his mom makes, the corned beef and cabbage that everybody else makes. She makes cold cannon and soda bread and has a couple other foods that not a lot of people know about. So, and they, in our area, they have the Celtic Games, and a couple of my in-laws like go to that kind of religiously every year because of their Irish heritage. But that's kind of it. Like I don't really do anything that I think has anything to do with my heritage. So. Okay, so our next thing is we need to compare our answers as a group. So what trends do we see amongst each other?
I heard a lot of American cheese and white bread.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
But
that we pretty much do with the American culture.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of, somewhat commonality things, but I think the overriding fact was we all claim American heritage.
Yeah.
How many generations in are we? I'm like 8th or 9th generation in. I've never been to Germany. I have no burning desire to go to Germany. I mean, it's just, I know that's where we're from, and now we're done. I mean.
Yeah, I don't know how many generations I go back either. I mean, I would more than 4 because I met my great grandma and she wasn't an immigrant. So
yeah.
So yeah. Okay, so we'll move on. It says one element of optional ethnicity that Waters describes in her article is that some people identify with an ethnicity that they do not officially belong to. Some may have married into that heritage, while others may love the culture. In an LDS context, some returned missionaries strongly associate with an ethnicity from their mission fields. So do any of you identify with one of these types of ethnicities, and how so? Like, have you adopted some other culture?
I guess I'm seriously Iowan, because I went to Iowa on my mission.
What to do with the language?
Well, it was a difficult language to learn.
Poor Marty.
So what do you do that's island?
Well, we like to eat corn and we like to eat beef and pig too. There's a lot of pigs in Iowa, so those are the things that they are all about. Their corn-fed beef and corn that they grow, and that's actually the Iowan song, where the tall corn grows. For real.
You can stop saying no, Marty.
But it was a fun mission. I had a great time, and the Midwest people are just all so kind. But I don't know that they are of any where I was at where there was any specific nationality. We did have one sister and brother that were older, and they were German, and they would have us over and we'd almost always have some sort of sauerkraut at their house. So that was fun.
Yeah. Anybody
I've
else?
seen it a little bit in my family. I have two older siblings that both went to Brazil on their missions, and my sister, she went there and she definitely appreciates the culture, but she is still more like me, where I'm very white. And she still very much appreciates the culture, and she still speaks the language with her friends. But my brother, on the other hand, he briefly met a girl there, and anyways, long story short, they ended up getting married, and so she's from Brazil, and so he's very much taken on that culture. So I've seen that, where he speaks the language probably 50% of the time, I would say, because she speaks both languages, but she prefers to speak Portuguese, and he's very much taking on that culture as his own. I think they still go to a Portuguese-speaking ward where a lot of the members are from Brazil or went to Brazil on their missions. So I've seen that. But as for myself, I'm still very white. My boyfriend, his family is Jamaican, and so I definitely appreciate the culture, but I don't speak anything. I don't claim that culture or anything.
That's funny. My husband went to Jamaica on his mission.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "Did you learn the language?" And he goes, "No." And everyone's like, "Don't they speak patois?" He goes, "Yeah, it's just stupid English."
What the heck?
Okay.
but it's funny because he'll say something to me in patois, and then he breaks it down like each word, and it's like, oh, okay. It's like you've taken in the English language and have like taken out some consonants and vowels here and there.
What are you calling the language, Kelly?
It's called patois.
Okay. I thought it was Jamaican. Hey, I don't get out much.
I should have him come in and say something.
Yeah.
You know,
Marty can sing some more.
Yeah. But yeah, he doesn't. He didn't bring any of it home with him. That's for sure. Although when he gets around a mission companion, they start using some of the language, and like for children are called pick me, and so he calls our kids pick me. But other than that, it's like you just don't assume that it's part of it. Anyway.
That's interesting.
Now, I thought you guys wanted me to stop torturing you.
Yeah, if her husband's going to speak a fake foreign language, you can sing.
Yeah.
Very scared, Marty.
Okay, so I'll go next. So I think being in California, not that I identify with the culture or anything, but I feel like there's a lot of Mexican culture in my life. I mean, like I like doing piñatas with my kids. I love all Mexican food. We have it all of the time. I celebrate Cinco de Mayo. You know, with just like Mexican food and things like that. But I don't think that I strongly associate with it, but I've definitely feel like I have adapted some of that culture into my life. So. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You looked frozen, so I didn't know if my computer was.
I was just sitting here.
No, you're fine. Like last week, you froze up, so I was like, oh, okay. So Cheryl, do you have mine?
Loud and clear for me.
Just don't sing, Marty. It's all good.
Okay.
I am an adult convert to the church. So that leaves me at a serious disadvantage. To a degree, I'm still on my mission. So, I'm not sure. And I was talking to my husband about this at dinner, and I'm not sure if this really qualifies as culture identification, but I identify with the church culture.
Yeah.
I mean but this is where I have to try to maybe draw a line. Is there a difference between the church culture and the gospel?
Are you asking that as a question?
Yeah. I need to get an answer because it depends on whether or not, how am I identifying?
Well, I would say they're two separate things.
Okay.
That church culture and the gospel, because I feel like culture is brought about by people, and the gospel is not based on people. Does that, I mean, so like, okay. A lot of people are like, well, a lot of people think that the gospel is the people. So you have all of these bad examples or good examples. So I like to pull people out of the gospel, and it is what it is. I don't look at people as examples of the gospel. I mean, obviously there's people that show good attributes of the gospel, but I think when you look at people and try to look at the people to see the gospel, you're not always going to see the fullness that way.
Yeah.
So, but I do think as Mormons, there are certain things, like in my communication class, we were talking about different language, and the church does have a different language. So I do see, I guess I see both sides, that your culture could be LDS as well, because we use things like the stake and ward activities and FHE. Mutual, FHE, that other people don't. I mean, it is the language on it, but I feel like they're kind of different.
Well, and thinking about a culture too, I know there's almost a rift in some neighborhoods in Salt Lake City, more than Provo. In Provo, and we lived there years and years ago, and it's changed so much. But there's a more dominant LDS membership level in Provo than there is in Salt Lake, and non-members in Salt Lake feel that the members somewhat look down their nose at those who are not members of the church, kind of whisper behind the backs of someone who's not a returned missionary, and that takes on a cultural connotation that's not good. So I'm not sure that maybe identifying with the LDS culture necessarily is a good thing. To identify with the gospel, obviously, but maybe for me that's not a valid argument.
But I think that I think that the culture of the LDS people is different from where you're at. Like, there are not a lot of Mormons. Well, I guess where I live right now there are. We live in Mormon Alley, but we're 2 blocks from the church in Colorado, and that just is not normal here. But most LDS people here in Colorado are completely different, and we want to be separated from Utah Mormons, because Utah Mormons are bad. Not really, I'm just saying, but there is a cultural difference in where we're at as LDS people also. And the difference, I think, also is when we're talking about the gospel is the teachings of the Savior Jesus Christ. And so we have the gospel, but it's not really a culture. The way we live and the choices that we make are cultural in a way, even if we're living the gospel. But I agree. I don't think that is. I don't believe that is the gospel. The gospel is not the culture.
Yeah.
It would be
okay.
fantastic.
I don't identify with. I don't identify with any other culture than American. So now we're done. I didn't serve a mission, so I haven't had an immersion into another culture. So, nope.
I just wanted I wanted to add to what both of you said about like Utah Mormons are different. I guess the culture of being a Mormon in Utah is different. And my sister-in-law, she moved here from Utah a few years ago, and it was very common for people in their ward during second hour, instead of going to the Sunday school, they would go down to the nearest Maverick and get a soda, and then hang out in the foyer, and then come back for Relief Society or Elders Quorum. And it's funny is because I think outside of Utah, you're like, what? Like, can't believe you would do that. But in Utah, it's like, I don't know. I feel like there's a bigger magnifying glass on people there. I don't know. But
expectations, maybe?
I've heard that, you know, like, oh, the Utah Mormons are good or bad. You don't want to move to Utah because then you're being judged about everything that you're doing. You know, if you're mowing your lawn Sunday, someone's going to say something to you about it. So I think I kind of agree with Marty. The culture is probably more where you live. But I do feel like the church does have some culture that's universal and some that's not. Anyway. So the last question is, do you think that you have the freedom to select the content and strength of your ethnicity identity? Or does society choose how you're labeled based on your appearance and stereotypes? How might this vary for different groups or in different areas or countries?
Well, I think that when people see you, they pass a judgment immediately. And so I'm pretty vanilla. And so I'm everything that is, it's kind of acultural, if I could explain it that way. You know, I'm going to do the things that everybody else does, and they don't expect anything more from me, except for that I tend to, because I'm also a veteran, I do a lot of things for Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Not that those are cultural in any way, shape, or form, but to me, those are special things and special days that I work on. And people that know me have learned that and know that about me.
So do you think that you're labeled at all based on those things?
Yeah, I'm pretty much labeled vanilla. Plain.
No, that's okay. So I'm gonna go because after you said that, I kind of thought of something. I mean, I guess I don't ever feel like I'm stereotyped. Maybe I am, but it is always funny to me that my husband and I love rap music. My husband more so than me. But it is always funny, like we're at a wedding or we go somewhere where people don't know you and they play music, and that we know the words and that we'll dance, and that like he can dance well. I have seen more people like freak out because my husband can dance, like not dance like competitively, but like can crump and moonwalk and do all these things. So like, yeah, here's this white guy and he'll just start dancing and doing stuff crazy, and everyone will look at him like, what? I can't believe that just happened. So I just think that's I mean, I feel like for the most part, I feel like whatever I want to do, I do have the freedom and the strength. I don't think that society puts any pressure on me on what I'm able to do or not, but I do think there are certain things that I do that could be shocking, but I don't think that it limits me as a person. I feel like that's just who I am. Yeah. But I also don't have any extreme things. But the dancing part, everyone's shocked by it. So.
Like I feel very much like you do too, Kelly. Maybe that's because of some of the freedom and, you know, anything goes here in California. I mean, my biggest thing is I feel that our society, and we can define our society, like I said, it could be just California, it could be the United States, has become so permissive and everything's okay that I could identify with being part of the turnip culture, and that's okay. You know, so, but I don't feel that I'm limited in any way. My husband takes very much after President Hinckley when he was talking about his wife, you know, stand back, let her fly, and be amazed at what she can do. I don't amaze him, but you get what I mean. That's he just yeah. There's no control. There's no limitations. School is a perfect example. I've been doing this for a little over 4 years, and he's still there with me. So yeah.
I just had a few thoughts. I was thinking about. I feel like I personally, I definitely have the freedom to kind of select what my culture is. I guess I don't know. Not that I really have any sort of ethnic whatever that I choose. I guess. What was, but society definitely does stereotype me and others, but I don't necessarily let it affect me. But I guess I started thinking about like I don't know her name. The one there was a video we saw a couple weeks ago where the lady was identifying as black, and so I was thinking about that because I feel like everybody does have the freedom to kind of select their ethnic identity, or like for me, where I know I do have German or Dutch or whatever in me that I could choose to celebrate or whatever. But then if I had a hint of African in me and I chose to celebrate that and choose that, I do think that there would be backlash on that for whatever reason people have.
You had said that yes, you are stereotyping in the beginning. Do you have like an example at all of like to bring that forward? If you want to share it or not, you don't have to.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm stereotyped too heavily. I think people see me as maybe cultureless, but I see myself as that too. So I don't know. And I think what you were saying as well, where they may stereotype me as not being able to dance, and maybe I can. Just little things like that.
Awesome. Well, does anybody else want to add anything about this topic at all? We're done with our questions, so.
I'm good.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting to me how, for the most part, most Americans have more than one ethnicity. And I don't, and maybe this is just my closed-mindedness, but I don't know why you would need to reach out of whatever your ethnicity is to celebrate something else. I think Kelly touched on it a little while ago. Here in California, the Hispanic culture is very, very prominent. And, you know, I like the food. I love the colors of the clothing, but I don't feel a need to really embrace that as part of me. I think there's a great big difference between appreciating a culture and embracing it.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
No arguments.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of add to what you said. I think that the further you get away from like being an immigrant, I think a lot of us sounds like we're several generations back. I feel like you lose some of that because we didn't have something before to hold on to, where I think some of those immigrants, they do, and the first and second and third, maybe even third generation has a little bit more of that culture to hang on to, whereas I think my family must have lost that down the line. It has kind of been bred out of us or something. So I think that we just
diluted maybe with marriages and
yeah,
you know, that kind of thing too. Yeah.
And maybe I do have some traditions that we do as a family that have been passed down from generations that I don't know that that's where it came from. I've never been explained to that way, but that's just kind of how we've done things. So I don't really tie anything to my heritage at all. So, well, all right. It's always fun. Does anybody, Cheryl, you can stop the recording.
Okay. All right. Let me stop that. Hang on one second.